Hello, we are starting a brand new unit. So like most units, you sometimes have to learn new vocabulary. So the first vocabulary term I want to go over with you is the word integers. So what are integers? So when you were little and you started learning how to count, you started counting whole numbers. You counted 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. So integers is that set of whole numbers and they're opposites. So now we're going to introduce negative numbers. So the opposite of 1 is -1. The opposite of 2 is -2, so on and so forth. So integers include whole numbers, which are counting numbers, their opposites, and the number 0. All right. So what are integers not? Integers are not decimals, or fractions, okay? So there's such a thing as a negative fraction. For example, -1/2 is a real number, but it's not an integer because it's a fraction. Or 0.75, that's a real number, right? That could represent 75 cents, which is real. However, it's not an integer because it's not a whole number. Okay, so you need to know what integers are. They're whole numbers opposites, which are whole negative numbers, and the digit 0. So what does absolute value mean? Absolute value is distance. Okay, so distance from 0 on a number line. The symbol for absolute value is in this equation, these vertical lines right here. So I would say this, what is the absolute value of 7? Well, the absolute value of 7 is 7. So it's all related back to 0. So if I want to know how many points or how many spaces from 0 is 3 on a number line, basically what I'm asking you is what is the absolute value of 3? How many spaces from 0 is 3 on a number line? Well, what if I went to the left of 0? What if I said, what is the absolute value of -3? Well, -3 is still 3 units from 0, so it's +3. So basically, absolute value is always positive because distance is positive. For example, if you lived in your house, your fancy house like that, right? And let's say Publix is to the east of your house, but then your church is to the west of your house, would you say, I'm going to go 5 miles to Publix and then I'm going to go -15 miles to get back to my church? No, of course you wouldn't. So just because you go the opposite way from where you started doesn't mean that's not a negative number. Distance is always positive. All right, so now we're going to start comparing integers. So comparing integers just simply means to recognize which ones are smaller and which ones are bigger. So let's compare -3 and -1. So the first thing we'll do is identify them on the graph. So here's -1 right there, and here's -3 right here. And then we're going to think, okay, which one is farther left on the number line? The one farther to the left is the smaller one. Okay, so that's true of all number lines. The farther right you go on a number line, the bigger the numbers get. The farther left you go on a number line, the smaller the numbers get. That means -10 is smaller than -1, and so is -3. -3 is less than -1, okay? So the farther right you go on a number line, the bigger the numbers get. So let's compare the following integers. So you guys, hopefully you have my notes. So I want you guys to compare these by using greater than or less than symbols. All right, so -4 and -6. So I'm going to find them right here. I'm looking for the one that's farthest is the smallest. Since -4 is to the right of -6, I'm going to say -4 is greater than -6. -4 is greater than -6. What about +1 and -3? Well, all positive numbers are greater than negative numbers. What about 11 and negative 3? Once again, positive numbers are always greater than negative numbers. What about 56 and 67? Our number line doesn't go that far to the right. However, we know if we had $56 and our brother had $67, we have less than our brother, right? And then finally, what about this big negative number? This big negative number is actually less than negative 4 because it's further left. All right, what about this situation? Justin has a score of negative 4 on the Trueville trivia game. Desiree's score is negative 5. Write an inequality to compare the scores. So let's start with Justin. Justin has negative 4. Desiree has negative 5. So who's winning? Desiree's winning because negative 4 is greater than negative 5. The temperature on Tuesday was 2 degrees Fahrenheit. The temperature on Wednesday was negative 2 degrees Fahrenheit. Write an inequality to compare the temperatures. Well, positive 2 degrees is what compared to negative 2? It's warmer, right? Positive 2 is greater than negative 2. All right, so you can use a number line to order a set of integers. So order the following integers from least to greatest using a number line. So what'd you guys get? I got negative 9 as farthest left, negative 9, then negative 3, then 6. Nope, just kidding. 6 is the greatest number. So negative 9, negative 3, 0, and 6. All right, so we plotted them. Well, in my brain I did. And then we listed them in order from least to greatest. If you're putting them in order from greatest to least, you would write them in order from right to left because larger numbers are to the right. And there they are. Order the following from least to greatest. Now this one says greatest to least. Number 3 says greatest to least, so be careful. Okay. All right, so what are opposites on a number line? Opposite numbers are also called additive inverses. Okay, so it says graph the integer set from negative 5 to positive 5. So if I put 0 in the center, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now 5 is 5 spaces away from 0. So what other number would be 5 spaces from 0? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, negative 5 is the same spaces from 0 as positive 5. They're just on opposite sides of 0. So that means 5 and negative 5 are opposites. 5 and negative 5 are opposites. So what is the opposite of each of these numbers? What is the opposite of 2? Negative 2. What is the opposite of 4? Negative 4. What is the opposite of negative 3? Positive 3. And what is the opposite of negative 11? Positive 11. Those are opposite numbers, also called additive inverses. Now let's just go crazy and say, what is the opposite of an opposite? Well, what is the opposite of 4? Well, if we start with 4, what is the opposite of 4? That would be negative 4. And then the opposite of negative 4 is actually positive 4. Okay. What is the opposite of negative 5? So the opposite of negative 5 is 5. And then the opposite of negative 5 is negative 5. What is the opposite of 0? Well, that's kind of a trick question. There's no such thing as negative 0. So the opposite of 0, 0, and the opposite of that is 0. Okay, so basically, hopefully you'll see in these two examples, the opposite of it, I can't even say that. The opposite of its opposite is the original number. The opposite of the opposite of the opposite of -5 is -5. And if anyone asks you what's the opposite of 0, the answer is 0. There's no such thing as -0. All right, but going back to absolute value, what is absolute value? Absolute value is the distance a number is from 0 on a number line. And remember, distance itself is always positive. Okay? Which number in the pair is farther away from 0? Is 4 farther away from 0, or is -5 farther away from 0? -5 is. That means that the absolute value of -5 is greater than the absolute value of 4. So if I wrote that like an inequality, I would say the absolute value of 4 is less than the absolute value of -5, because that's like comparing 4 to +5. Which of these is farther away from 0? Well, 5 is. So the absolute value of 2 is less than the absolute value of 5, because that's comparing +2 to +5. Letter C, which of these numbers is farther away from 0? -3 is farther away from 0. So I could say the absolute value of 1 is less than the absolute value of 3, because that would just be like comparing +1 to +3. And of these two numbers, which one is farther away from 0? -12, because the absolute value of 12 is greater than the absolute value of 11. That's just like comparing 12 is greater than 11. So, like I was just writing, we use those two vertical lines to show absolute value. So this is the symbol used for the absolute value. It is read the absolute value of. So let's try a few. What is the absolute value of -3? How many spaces from 0 is -3? The answer is +3. What is the absolute value of 5? The answer is 5. What is the absolute value of 0? The answer is 0. 0 is 0. There's no spaces away from it, right? 0 spaces from itself. All right, so do you notice that when you have any number inside the absolute value signs, the answer is positive? What general statement can you make about absolute value? I could make that the distance is always positive. All right, now we got to be careful, because if it's written like this one on top, it actually means what is the opposite of the absolute value of -4? Well, the absolute value of -4 is 4, and the opposite of 4 is -4. So I got a negative when I saw the negative sign outside the absolute value marks. What does number 1 say? It says, what is the absolute value of 7? The answer is 7. What is the absolute value of -7? Well, the negative sign is inside the absolute value marks, so the answer is +7, because -7 is 7 spaces from 0. What is the absolute value of 10? The answer is 10. Number 4, what is the opposite of the absolute value of 5? Well, the absolute value of 5 is 5, and the opposite of that is -5. Once again, our answer is negative when we have this negative sign outside the absolute value signs. Number 5, what is the absolute value of 2 plus the absolute value of 6? The answer is 8. Number 6, what is the absolute value of 5 plus the absolute value of 5? Well, 5 plus 5 is 10. What is the absolute value of -6 minus the absolute value of -6? Well, this means 6 minus 6 equals 0. And now number 8 says, what is the opposite of the absolute value of 2 plus 5? 2 plus 5 is 7. The absolute value of 7 is 7. And the opposite of 7 is -7. Once again, my answer is negative when I have the negative sign outside the absolute value bars. All right, so let's look at this. If you're looking at a situation where you have sea level, and then you have below sea level, and you have above sea level, you're talking about positive and negative numbers. So sea level is always going to be represented with 0. Above sea level is always going to be represented by positive numbers, and below sea level would always be represented with negative numbers. That's the same thing as a thermometer. If you're talking about it's 5 degrees above 0 outside, it means it's 5 degrees, +5. If it's 10 degrees below 0, you would represent that by writing -10. All right, a seagull is flying at an altitude of 107 feet, and a shark is swimming at a depth of 112 feet. It should say below sea level. I don't like where it says relative to. I would prefer to say below sea level. That makes it very, very clear. Below sea level. Well, obviously, if it's in the ocean, it's below sea level, right? Duh. Which animal is farther from sea level? So which of these animals is farther from the surface of the sea? Well, actually, the shark is farther away from sea level, right? The next question is, because the absolute value of -112 is greater than the absolute value of 107. The next question is, how far apart are these animals? How far apart are the animals? Can you figure that out? Well, if I was the seagull and I wanted to land on the surface of the water, I'd have to fly down 107 feet, right? And then if that seagull could somehow reach that shark, it would have to go down another 112 feet. So how far apart are they? They're actually 229 feet apart, right? 107 plus 112 is 200 and not, no, it should be a 1, Ms. Richardson, 219 feet apart. I hope that makes sense to you. Absolute value in real life. All right, so let's look at these examples. If Sandra deposits $45 in her bank account, that's good if you deposit money and you're saving it. Then she withdraws, she takes out $40. How much money would she have left? She put in 45 and she takes out 40. How much is in her account? Well, she would have $5 left, right? She would have $5 left. If Joey makes $25 at the car wash, then he spends $25 at the mall, how much money does Joey have left? Well, these are opposite things, right? If you have positive $25 and then you spend, that means you take away $25, you have no money left. All right, number 3, what is the additive inverse? In other words, what is the opposite of 17? The answer is -17. If George is standing on a hill, all right, so here's my hill, and here is George. Hi, George. He's 20 feet up here above sea level, and Sarah is in a hole that's 3 feet below sea level. So here's sea level or ground level, and Sarah is standing in a hole down here. She's at 3 feet below sea level. That's just like saying -3. How far apart are they? How far apart is George and Sandra? Well, George would have to walk 20 feet down the hill and then 3 more feet to get to Sandra. So how far apart are they? They're 23 feet apart, right? Does that make sense? Between which 2 consecutive days is the temperature change the greatest? Well, on Monday and Tuesday, the temperature was 14 degrees and then it dropped to -10. So how much of a change is that? Well, to get from 14 to 0, that's 14 degrees. And then the temperature dropped 10 more degrees. So what was the temperature change? The temperature change was 24 degrees. It dropped 24 degrees, 14 plus 10. All right, from Tuesday to Wednesday, it was -10. So imagine a thermometer. So imagine 0 on our thermometer. Imagine it's -10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And then on Wednesday, it was 2 degrees above 0. How many degrees separate these two? Well, that's a change of 12 degrees. This actually was a decrease and this was an increase. All right, what about from Wednesday to Thursday? It was 2 degrees. It went way down here past -10 to -11, 12, 13, 14, 15. How much space separates +2 and -15? Well, that's a -17-degree drop. And then finally, Thursday, it was -15. And by the end of the day, Friday, it came way up here to positive. I can't find my pen. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 degrees. What is this difference right here? How many spaces separate -15 and 10? Well, that would be 25 degrees. Right? You agree? It was way down here and it came way up here to +10. So between what 2 consecutive days? Consecutive just means back to back. The answer is Thursday and Friday because there was a 25-degree change. All right, guys, I hope that helped. So you were answering questions along the way. So let me know if you have any questions and I will check in with you guys later. Have a great day.